Hilarious.
Okay, I am talking to the delightful Stephanie McCullough, who just finished an incredible conference, the first Yes Dan Mental Health Psychology Improv Conference. But we were just talking about Del Close. Let's hear that story about Del Close again.
Yes, because Del Close is very important to the Chicago improv scene. His practices are still being used, or at least some of the premise of it. But I moved here in 1996 and started grad school, so Del Close was very much still teaching at IO Theatre. And in my second year of grad school, it was required. I was taking a class on older adult development, older adult identification, how they relate to the world, how they're framing their world experience as a retired person. And my job was, the assignment was to interview an older person, and I didn't have anyone because I don't have any family in this city. So I interviewed Del Close on those little micro tapes. We ate at the 24-hour diner, which he picked because it's very hilarious. It's called the 24-hour diner, and it's not open 24 hours. It is closed for 4 hours. It doesn't exist anymore. It was walking distance. It was right on Belmont. It was walking distance from the apartment he stayed in. He talked nonstop. I believe I went through like 5 of those mini discs. I know, it was crazy. Wouldn't stop talking, told his whole life story. Well, but especially like where he is now, where he was then. I think he died about 4 years after that.
So how old do you think he was when you interviewed him?
I could pull up. Oh man,
we can go back.
I should look back on that. So yeah, I took the whole footage. I saved all those tapes, and then I wrote my paper about it with my own theory about. Now, Del Close lived a very artistic, on the edge of mainstream, very off mainstream, very alternative lifestyle. And when I got the paper back and the notes, the teacher wrote that I had really missed how much this. She didn't know who Del Close was. That I had missed that this man was confabulating a lot of stories about his life. That this was a lot of fantasy and a lot of imagery about who he was that could not possibly. Now Del Close. But the truth is, he did run with the circus. He did his whole story, and it's been a known story about rollerblading in the 70s among the sewage system in Chicago, which was what something kind of the punks fucking did. She just said it was all a lie. She just didn't believe a word of it, which I found hilarious. Those tapes I held on to for quite a long time, and Jason Chin, who passed away, who was an important, he started to make his mark, and he was a big contributor and creator at the Improv Olympic, now IO, was the one who said, "You have tapes of Del Close, like I will pay you for those tapes." So Jason Chin took them. There's many books about Del Close. I was not in improv at all when I did that interview.
How did you know about him?
My husband at the time really was bored while I was in grad school and was taking classes at IO, and he had Del Close as a teacher. And I started watching my husband's shows at the time and was listening to the piano player and was like, I think I could do that. But I had not, when I interviewed Del, I was still like a studying grad student, psychology person. Del was fascinating.
That's probably better in a way.
At the time, it was. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
What do you mean?
Well, that you weren't an improv person, and you had no idea about it at all.
No, I didn't admire him like that. So it was
kind of a fresh point of view coming in, and you weren't looking up to him as a great teacher.
No, he was fascinating. He talked about writing a letter to the last cigarette that he ever smoked. He knew that lung cancer was smoking was going to get him, but he had track marks. He has a son. He talked about his son. He talked about the women. He talked about the circus. He talked about who's the clown serial killer?
Gacy.
He had art from Gacy. He had befriended Gacy. He lived just a very extreme, different, edgy lifestyle. It was the 60s and 70s. He lived the 60s and 70s, I think. That was the impression I got. And I was just like now if I listened to the interview, I'd be so embarrassed at how I'm asking, probably not listening at all to what he's saying and just going down like, my next question is, I'm not even doing proper follow through, but that's the way you are when you're in your like second year in grad school, right?
That's hilarious. And music brought you into improv because you were already a musician.
Yes, I had stopped playing the piano for several years. I developed performance anxiety during college while I was at the music conservatory. So I got to the point where I was never going to play in public again. And I was acing my psychology classes. It was just a natural thing. So I switched over to get my bachelor's in psychology and go to grad school to be a psychologist. I knew I'd make a lot more money than trying to be a musician. At least I thought. Other like all the family drama of me being the last child, leaving the home, empty nest, mother's mental illness blows up, all the house of cards falls apart, and so I go into psychology. And it was just that I hadn't played the piano in a while, but hanging out at the improv club at IO was an annoyance, or good ways to get your brain off of like reading grad school and doing notes, write something real different. And there was always music involved, and I always thought that would be something I could totally do. Like, that's not hard. It made sense to me.
And now today you work as,
and now I own a theater
which we're sitting in right now.
Yeah, so now I don't do therapy, and I make a living and have my health insurance from doing improv, but specifically teaching music improv to actors, improvisers, and also people off the street that just are enjoying some respite from their lives to go to Second City and learn some improv and get some joy out of it, to your professional equity actors that want improv because it's going to help them in their professional career, and everyone in between.
And so how did you start this beautiful space? What's the name of it again? The
MCL Chicago, standing for Music Comedy Live. It isn't out. It's an extension of this because we were doing Mint here on Wednesday nights, and I was just a renter. I was just a renter of this space, and the place was going to close about 5 years ago, and so I didn't want that to happen. So I started talking to my friends about, let's see if we can take over the space and expand what music improv means and make it a viable product for the general population that's looking for something to do and entertain themselves on Friday night. And now they're warming up!
And it's a real grassroots kind of organization too. It's for the people.
Yeah. I'm not big on symbols, and I'm not big on branding. Like, to me, like, in theater, the expression show don't tell, right? So I don't have a Mint website. I don't have like sharp, quick images. My friends take the pictures and they're like, it's a show don't tell world for me, right? So show it, be there, be present. I don't need to tell you what a great organization, like, I don't need to worry about marketing who we are, right? It's interesting, people come and they see it and then they fall in love with it. So that's all I gotta do, I think.
So you just wrapped up an incredible, the first annual conference, Yes and Improv and Mental Health.
Oh, yes.
And it was an incredible, people came from all over. And how are you feeling about it now, after you've had some rest?
I am so, the sense of fulfillment I got out of it was, so I write musicals. I've written dozens and dozens of musicals, and I said on Saturday, while everyone was like mid-afternoon sessions, the creative fulfillment I came from it was better than any musical creative fulfillment I've gotten out of a musical in a very long time. I mean, when you create a musical, you know you're going to change people's lives for like 90 minutes, an hour. You're going to give them an experience they wouldn't get elsewhere. And you as a creative person can feel great about that. And God bless Hamilton and those artists. And I know I've written musicals that made me feel that way, but they don't make me feel that way anymore. This conference brought all of that out, and it was tenfold bigger than what I've gotten from my own creative ventures. Like, we have a musical opening this weekend, and it's fine, and it's fun, and it'll make people laugh, but it doesn't do for me what that did for me. just knowing you're going to help give people experience and help them transform it, go through, some transformation, just be changed. Right?
And there were so many people. Some of them were therapists who hadn't done improv.
Yep.
Some were professional players who do therapy and improv.
Yes, the whole spectrum.
Yeah.
It was really, really nice.
One of the things I admired about you, because I've been to a lot of mental health conferences over the years usually.
Yes.
But usually the conference organizers are running around like looking frazzled and scared, and you always had a sense of calmness and smiling and a totally yes and approach to everything.
Thank you. I figured out there's no trick to it, right? Like all that, I'm just really good at being in the moment, and I'm not afraid of it anymore. So it doesn't freak me out. Just like musicals, before a musical, before a show that's never been up in front of an audience, before any of that stuff. Yeah, what's the worst that's going to happen? And we'll be fine, right? We'll always be fine. And we have skilled people. So I'm glad you got that impression. I'm glad that came across, because that's how I felt. And
even when we had to change my workshop to the bar lobby,
right.
It was like last minute changes. Yes, and it was just and accepting everything.
Yeah, I'm not some people I guess are about control. I heard that. I heard that this weekend. I heard people say that improv really tests the controlling part of them. I totally appreciate that that's true. Not a thing for me, but I get it. And so that could be touched on when it comes to a conference. My biggest concern was just that people felt they got their money's worth, that they got a product, and that whatever brought them there, which was not CEU credits this time, so they had to have been brought through another inner question or an inner drive or an inner search. And I just want to make sure that I'm here are all the opportunities, and hopefully you are being able to pursue what that inner search is, and there's an opportunity for you to find it. That is my job, right? I'm not going to tell people what to think or how to do it or what to do. I'm just they all came with what they wanted to get out of it, and it's my job to provide those venues for it. And hopefully we did. We will definitely expand on that next time.
It was a beautiful community. It was a very spiritual experience too, because there was such a connection between so many of us. We had never met before, and by the end,
people were like, I've been an island. I feel like an island in my hometown, or I feel like I'm the only one among my colleagues who even talk about this. And now I'm with these people, and they're saying the very words that have been coming out of my mouth, and it makes me want to cry. I don't feel alone anymore. And I can believe it, because we're just the 1%. We're in Chicago. We're in the 1% where we get to experience this every day if we wish. So I totally understand. I get it. You're in Lafayette, Indiana. You're in some podunk town or a nice town. You're in an academic. I'll do Rachel Nason, an academic town where everything is about evidence-based, which is very important. But they have a certain language. Come to Chicago. You're going to be accepted. Even you were like, I dress the way I dress. This has always been my style. And here, no one thinks twice about it. Has to be my Rachel Mason. I love that woman.
So we're going to plan for next year. Bigger and better.
Bigger and better.
Really, thank you so much for this and your time and everything you've contributed.
You.
I just love you, Stephanie.
I love you too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.